So I'm Dante St. James. Tonight we're going to be looking at making your AI sound a bit more like you when it comes out. Because let's face it, I think we've all sort of had that feel. There's tells with AI that make it feel like it's really like someone's just gone and just thrown it in ChatGPT's free version, copied it, pasted it, and sent it to us. And I don't think any of us want that. We don't get entertained by it. We certainly don't feel good about it. So imagine if you were the one who was doing that and sending it off to people, it wouldn't be so great. I'm back after a night off last night. I was feeling very unwell last night, so I had to take a night off, but I'm back fully charged up and ready to go tonight for a quick look at making your AI sound a bit more like you. We're going to look at it in ChatGPT. We're going to look at doing exactly the same thing in Claude, in Gemini, and in Copilot as well. So part of this is to, obviously have some writing of your own that you've got somewhere that you can draw on. I've got like hundreds of pieces of writing I can do. I've been active on the internet for a very long time. But if you have things like emails, which you've written before, whether they're professional tone or more personal tone, if you've written blogs, if you've written a book even, all that sort of stuff contributes to your tone of voice. And you can put some generic sort of terms in there as well, which allow you to say, I want this to be professional but approachable. I want it to have certain rules like Australian spelling or using Australian colloquialisms, but not becoming too Steve Irwin-ish. So let's have a look what that looks like, and I'll share my screen and we'll get started. So the first place we're going to look at is in ChatGPT, because let's face it, that's where most of you are living right now. You're living in ChatGPT. So we've got all the normal ChatGPT stuff over here. We've got the normal text box in there. In order to make this work, there's two different ways you can make it work. I've got one spot, which is under your settings. So we go down to the settings down the left-hand side, up to our settings. And then under that, you'll see the general. And in this general area, I want you to then go down to personalization. Under personalization, this is the characteristics of what it's actually talking back to you with. That's not what we want. What we want is the ability for you to set custom instructions. And these custom instructions are where you are setting certain rules. So in my rules in ChatGPT, sorry for the swear words you'll see there, but there's a reason why I've got them, and that will become very obvious. I just can't blur them out at this late stage. But it's all about really me saying, don't sound like ChatGPT. I want you not necessarily to sound like me, but I want you not to sound like ChatGPT. And this is stage one that I go through. And I can do this in ChatGPT. We can do it in Claude, not so much in the others, but there are other ways we can do it. So in here, I've got a whole lot of stuff I've written in here. There's certain words I've told it not to use. Some of those like landscape, tapestry, delve, underscore, they're just words which I would never use. And they're words that are often thought of, oh, that sounds so much like ChatGPT. So I've asked it not to use those words. I don't want to have those words anywhere in there. Then we'll go, okay, structural patterns to avoid. The not X but Y. So it's where it's saying, it's not this, it's that. I really want to get that out of my writing. I don't want to use it. The magical rule of three, which is going, it was, God, gone down straight down the swear words again, didn't we? Back, structural again. If only I could like stretch this down a little bit, I'd be able to show you a whole list all at once. I do have this whole entire thing that I'll send out after this, probably early tomorrow morning. All the rules that will help you to get that down a bit. It just won't all fit into the ChatGPT custom instructions. It will fit in Claude, but you may have to just use it a slightly different way when you're using something like a ChatGPT project. So the structural patterns, we're looking at things like the neat list of three. Oh, done it again. The neat list of three, I use 2, 4, or even something uneven rhythm. So what I usually do is go, I don't want to go, it was big, it was huge, it was massive. I want to avoid that pattern because it's a very, very AI-ish kind of pattern. The kicker, like the truth is, here's the thing, let's be honest, here's the kicker, all that kind of thing. I don't want any of that. The style would be then to use words over abstractions. So instead of, say, buttercup instead of flower, river instead of waterway, handshake instead of gesture, frost instead of cold. So what we're doing is trying to make it be much more specific in the language it's using. Also, avoid being a polite assistant and be blunt, biased, or even fragmented. I use a mode on my Claude called caveman mode, and I'll show you soon what that feels like and how I work with that. It plays with the formatting, so avoiding the M dashes and the limit colon, only using a few colons altogether, using short sentences or commas. Also, skip the signposting like that. Let's explore or let's take a look at this. I don't want to do that. Just get into it. Just get into the thought. I want it to then run a final check to say that if it reads like a corporate press release, rewrite it, make it sharper, make it more conversational. I've got certain swear words I said are okay and certain ones I don't. I want to choose storytelling over explanation, and I want to use Australian English that reflects, and look at this, my tone. Now, something's a bit different for me because I have literally thousands of pieces on the internet that I've written since the very beginning of the internet. I was using it since 1996. So I've got lots of stuff out there that it can pull from that's got my name attached to it. So it knows my tone over a very long period of time. So it can go look for me. I'm not even famous, but it lets me have that in there. You may not have that, so you would probably leave that out. Or you could say reflect the tone uploaded in a project. And that's a different sort of thing. So let's get out of there, go back to the second way in ChatGPT you can make this work. And that's in projects and GPTs. So GPT is kind of like a repeated thing that you can do that you can share with other people. They can follow those instructions as well. And one of them I've created is, let's say I look at all my ones, just move my photo of myself out of the way, under my GPTs. I've got several in here that I've made over time. I don't use these much anymore. I mostly use Claude, but I'm still there in here. And one of these could be that I've got a Dante GPT right here. So in the Dante GPT, this is a particular style of writing that I have trained it to have through a series of sequences. So when you say start in this GPT, it then asks you a question. You give answers to those questions and it keeps on going down the list from there. So let's look at it. What it's first of all got is I can upload files that contain the writing style that I have. So in my case, it could be in my downloads. I can look for, I've got a whole bunch of PDFs in here. So let's have a look for those PDFs because I'll be able to see them straight away. So here's a whole bunch of them. So gosh, which ones are they? So there's a bunch of them which are basically the things I've downloaded, which are from my writing in the past. So this preview stuff, all these are all ideas that I could take of my writing before there was ever a ChatGPT or any of that. So I can load those into the files, those upload files. And what it does, it provides context for the style that I'm looking at. What I'm also asking for is this sequence of instructions. So I will send you a very similar version to this so you can add in your own there. And it's really saying when it starts, begin a sequence which says, number one, ask me what topic I'd like to write about. Then ask what personal story I want to add. Then add the context I want to go within. So for instance, is it a teaching story? Is it an observational story, etc.? Then it's going to ask who the cohorts that I want to work with, who are the particular kinds of people I'm writing this for. Then is it a post or an article? If it's a post, then produce this post between 100, 300 words. Here's the rules for it. If it's and I haven't got any rules there particularly for an article, but I'll just go, yeah, it's just a post. The rules are the output should be raw. There's a decision to be either professional, do that. I've got some swear word stuff in there as well. No, that is not true. That's the only swear word that's acceptable. Do not mention, identify the cohort by name. Just little rules are built in there that I want to make this thing work for. So that's basically the set of instructions. Inside there, I've got a whole bunch of files that I've loaded up. And then I've just said people can use whatever model they want to use. So the test run would be, we can run it from down here, go start. And then it's going to ask me the question. There we go. What topic would I like to write about today? I'm going to say I'm going to write about small business. And it's going to ask me, what is the story I want to add about it? So I'm going to make up one. This morning, I caught up with a small business owner in Brisbane who was really worried about the state of the economy and whether they should be changing. They've got a retail store in a northern suburb that has seen that area really see people just not coming in. Foot traffic's just not happening like it used to. And so what we did, we talked about what it is that brings people in. And what we found is that the key thing that was bringing people in that did come in was they knew what they were going to get and they were looking for a very specific thing. So I thought, well, maybe that's the question, is that how did they know that they wanted to get that thing that you have? And how do they know that you had it? When we found that, we found the key to it, that everything that was listed on the website that was showing that they had it, that made them searchable. That made them able to be found. So for people within a 50-kilometer radius who cannot wait for next week for it to arrive by Temu or Amazon, we're like, well, yeah, I will drive 50 kilometers or 20 kilometers or even 2 kilometers to get there and buy it from there. So I'll just put in that little story there. I load that up now once it's done the transcript. Yep, that's looking good. Now it's going to go, okay, that gives us a strong story. Now, what is the kind of story you want to tell? Do you want to teach? Do you want to say what you noticed? How do you think differently to others? I'm going to go, maybe what have I noticed about this? So B. So what I'm doing is putting in the little options as I'm going along. And then who do I want to aim it at? I want to aim it at the successful implementer, the overwhelmed. I'm going to say the overwhelmed is the kind of people I want to do. So 1, 2, or 3, I said B. Perfect. It's aiming it. Do I prefer to write a LinkedIn post? LinkedIn, yes, is what I want to write. And now it's writing it. So that's used a very instant profile. It's not going to be the best thing. It's like this morning I sat down with a small business owner in Brisbane who was worried, really worried. They've got a small retail store in the northern suburb and the foot traffic just isn't there like it used to be. And when you're watching fewer people walk through the door, it's easy to think, shit, do I need to change anything? But we started looking at the people who were still coming in. We noticed something. They weren't wandering in. They were coming in because they wanted something specific. This is exactly the way I would write. It's absolutely nailed the tone of how I write, and it got it really right. Like that to me is an observational tone. But what it did, it went through a process in the configuration. That set of questions it's asking you to put in is deliberately there to help give it content and context. And the context is what's turning it from just another generic story to something very, very specific. And then I did that second thing, which was to add the personal story. I made that one up. But if it was a real story, I could have talked about meeting up with Jane last week. I could have had my conversation with Liz last week, any of that sort of thing, and it would still do the same. Those two things alone, the way you tell your story, and especially if you're using the dictation button in there, that little microphone there, when you're dictating in, it picks up your kind of words, your kind of way of explaining things. There's a style we use when we're talking to these rather than typing them in. Typing is very edited. It's very deliberate. It's very thought over. We don't think that heavily when it comes to what we're talking into. Like when we're talking to friends, we don't overthink what we're saying. We just say it. And that's the same here. We don't need to overthink what we're saying. We just say things. We tell the story the way we remember it, using the language we remembered it in, and in the way and the style and the colloquial terms that we would normally use. So therefore, it then can't help but sound like you because it's taking that in. Plus, I've got it trained over here on a whole bunch of things which know that I say bloody all the time. It's just a really bad habit of mine to say that. And you come out with something which really does sound like you. It doesn't feel like yet another ChatGPT thing. And it has a nice little type there. Maybe you just need to make what you've already got easy to find. So it's got a good, happy ending to it with a piece that someone can take away and apply to their business if that's what you're writing for. So that's a way you can do it in ChatGPT. The third way to do it in ChatGPT is through projects. So projects over here. So I've got one here, Dante GPT, the same exact one. So if I click on the edit, we can see how that's being put together. And you can see examples of when I've used it. So for example, in here, I've got project settings. And in those project settings, you'll see that I've got that same thing. I haven't got any instructions in this one because this is like a copy. It's not the real one that I usually use, but it does have a lot of training data in it. It's also got access to my library. So if you were wondering where all your files used to go, where you used to load them up, sitting here in the library. So that's where they're sitting. So if I go into my whole list of projects, you can say there's me, writing tool. So this writing tool is a good example of something which has been trained to me, but this Write Like Dante here, this one down here, this is actually the first one I ever created, which I made it to write like me. You can see I've got quite a lot of them in here. In here and project settings, you'll see that same sequence I've written, except I've got it a little bit different. I'm going write it in for LinkedIn, write it for a website, write it for Facebook, write it for X or Blue Sky, wait for the response and use the knowledge tone for the whole, for how it's going to go and how it's going to be. I've sort of fiddled with this one a bit, and I've got the full version of this sitting on a file that I'll send you as a result of at the end of this. So you've got sort of these templates you can use to write those things out to help you to just get that a little bit better. But part of that is it's going into my library and it's actually accessing all the stuff in my library. So what does a library look like? It is everything I've ever loaded up. So it's got, you know, a lot of those documents. So you can see documents in PDF that I've loaded up, tons and tons and tons of them, and it just goes on and on and on. And what it's starting to pick up is a theme on, okay, I can see that's by you, so I know that's something that actually adds to your voice as well. So all those things are in there that I've ever loaded up. And in my GPTs over here as well, and my projects, that has how it's learned how to do that. If you go to Claude, it's really, really similar. So in Claude, for example, we've got projects. A bit neater over on Claude, isn't it? Go to our projects, and I can go into my, I've got a Write Like Dante one in here as well. And you can see this is one I use a lot more often. I can just search for it, Write Like Dante, and it'll come up. There we go. And it's got a set of instructions over here, the same thing. What would you like to write about? What personal values? So I've added a bit of extra into this. I've added my personal values in there. So it infuses a bit of a flavor in there. If I'm writing about honesty, what I'm writing is about showing an honest approach to my stuff with an edge of vulnerability, and explain the truth is often inspiring, but it's sometimes tough love that's delivered with a view to a better future. So I've really explained what those values are. I've got the same 5 questions. What can I teach? What have I noticed? All that stuff. And then I've got the same kind of cohort. So this time, this is much more up to date with what I'm actually doing now. So career starters, career changers, solopreneurs, and small business owners are the 4 groups of people that I write for. Then I ask if there's an other. If there's an other, I might be writing for international students, maybe. I can wait for a response, and then it will say, yep, post for social media article, 10 minutes video script, 60-second video script, and then proceed with the following. And then I've got a whole bunch of rules that go on and on and on and on. How to actually write a 10-minute video script, how to write an article, how to write a LinkedIn thing in my style, the kind of style I want, which is largely being referenced from a lot of other people who do similar things that I do. I get ideas, I try some, I chuck some, I combine some together, and I come up with basically this kind of approach. This is actually the version I'm going to send to you, because it's got all these like styles written into it. So you don't have to go sort of searching for, oh, what's my specific style of a YouTube video? I've never created one before. This gives you a default kind of setting to get going from. And all you need to do is just change out my stuff. So I've got, say, for instance, certain words that I will use, you can take that out. And I've also loaded in my knowledge files a list of my last 2,600 LinkedIn posts in an Excel file down the bottom here. So that's really giving it a good idea of how I write, as well as these PDFs of all these examples of my blog that I wrote before I went into using ChatGPT and Claude and all those things to write it. So you can see I've written a whole bunch of things here. You can see the sequence go in. So from the start, what topic today? Entrepreneurship. What value drives this piece? Approachability. What question are you answering? What have I noticed? Observation angle, who's it for? The small business owner. And then I talked to it about the story I wanted to talk about, which was, you know, people struggling in Bustleton and Bunbury with restaurants and all that sort of thing. And I'm like, you know, dude, you're a farmer, you should be able to actually produce this. They produce some incredible fruit and vegetables down in that area in Western Australia. It's just phenomenal. And then it's like, oh yeah, good story. What format? Social media. Great. And then it writes the social media post in a really close format to what I would write, to the point where I read it and went, that sounds like me. That sounds like the way I would speak, the same way I would write. And that's because it got to draw from my story, which was done in my voice, because I actually transcribed it in. And it's also pulling from all that information we saw elsewhere. So all those files that are sitting in here and these instructions, it pulled all of that information and went, yep, that's the style we're looking for. Now, of course, it doesn't have to get all these and load them up to the cloud and say, oh yeah, every time read all these and that's the style. It's got a memory in here as well. This is where Claude kind of sets apart. It's got these really good project memories, and the project memory has really got some very key information about me, that's saying this is really who this guy is. And it's called an MD file. And it's like a file that it's made on its own, that is a more contemporary version that gets updated. So when I change something in my operating of this particular project, it goes, oh, well, I'm going to add this little fact in there too, because I noticed the last 3 or 5 times you've actually mentioned this change. So that's now the default of how I'm going to operate. And it's all very much the style I would write in based upon what it picked up from here and what I've been correcting as I've been doing these chats. And just like the other one, I would start it off by going into the project and typing start, because that is what I've told it to do. I've told it when I type start, then come back and give me the first question. What is the topic? So I go, social media for business, maybe. And then it's going to go, okay, that's great. Social media for business. What's the next option I want you to pick from? It's what your value is. Honesty, effectiveness, approachability, and so on and so forth until we get to the end. And it punches out something which I look at and rarely need to change much about it. But you think, well, aren't you just getting AI to write all your stuff? Well, no, I'm not. Because remember, I've got to actually give it all the material. I've got to make all the decisions, and it's all my language that it's based upon. So whilst AI may be the thing that outputs the end product, I still have to put all that in first. And that's the very big mindset change you've got to get to, is that it's pretty much just gone, I've created my second brain. This is a clone of the way I think and the way I present things. And if I get that out and go, you know what? That's exactly what I would say, then I'm pretty happy with that. Now, sometimes it doesn't, and I may want to change that just a little bit. Over on Google's Gemini, we do it through gems. So over here, we've got gems, and I've got a gem that I've built over here, which is got quite a few of them. I've got an event writer, but Dante GPT is the version I've got in here. So I've gone ahead and deliberately replicated all these in here. So we can see I could do the whole start thing again. So let's go start. And it would start that process in the same way. What is the topic you want to speak about today? So Gemini for me has been a little slow lately because I'm using the pro version probably. So it's going, okay, who's the role? What am I doing? Okay, I'm going to ask you, here we go. What's the script? It's really having a big, deep think. What topic would you like to do? So I do the same, social media for business. And it sets off that same path. But this way it's done in gems. And the gems are, so if you look at all these, you can see it's very, very similar to Claude and ChatGPT. I could go in and edit this one, and it's got the same kind of stuff going on inside it. A name, what it's about. Here's the sequence, the process I want it to go through. Same thing. Here's the things I've trained it on. So I've trained it on the same LinkedIn post and the same PDFs of those blog posts that I wrote ages ago, or those newsletters. And then it gives me then this over here. But it's also got, like, I could say disable the citations, which I definitely want. I don't want it to actually put the citations of where it got that information or that style from. I just want it to write it straight out, especially because it's referencing my own stuff. And that's exactly the same process. And I can practice it over here. As you can see, these tools are all basically the same at the moment. At the moment, for me, Claude does a lot better. But for writing, I would actually like Claude to use Opus 4.6, which is an older model. I find that 4.6 is actually a nicer writer. Ever since then, it's become a little bit harsh and a little bit over-explaining and uses a lot of jargon that I don't want it to use. And I just have to keep correcting it all the time. But the Sonnet 4.6, for now, is a very good writer. ChatGPT is just insanely good at the moment. Just the instant version or the medium version doesn't really matter. That's more to do with the thinking and the power of it. You can use high or you can use medium, and they're both really, really good. Using instant for the very much instant question and answer, but medium is pretty good for writing, and high is excellent. The full extra high, you probably don't need it. High is just enough. In Gemini, I don't have to use Pro. In fact, Pro for me is not as great a writer sometimes when I need to do things very rapidly. So what I might do instead is, when I'm doing it, I'll change from Pro to Flash. 3.6 Flash is excellent. It is an excellent writer, particularly when you've already given it the training of what it is you want it to write like we've done in here. I've loaded in a lot of things which are examples of the way I write, the way I think, the kind of colloquialisms I have. If you've got that in there, you don't need to use the Pro model. And the best part of that is, if you're using the free versions of any of these, when you're using Gems or you're using Claude, you can get access to projects, but it will use up your allowance really fast when you're using the most recent model. So if you're using any of the Opuses or Fable, what you want to do is bring it back to Sonnet, and it will use that a lot slower. In Gemini, bring it back to 3.6 Flash. Because remember, it doesn't have to be super creative because you're putting all the creative content in there for it. And in ChatGPT, You can bring that back to, medium or high will do a pretty good job. At the moment, ChatGPT is being a little bit more helpful with the allowances. Claude seems to be using up allowances really, really quickly. I pay like $150. I think this month it's going to be nearly 300 the way I'm going. And that's just part of the business of what I do. And then there's our lonely little Copilot over here. Copilot from Microsoft is a bit of an outlier because it's never really had that projectability until recently. And its projectability is what we call notebooks. And they're accessed through the top here, under here. So a notebook, you'll notice, looks very, very similar to other kinds of projects. You've got your summary of what you want it to do. It's got the things you want to load it up in. So that's the output. Over here is where we load everything up. So we can go into our settings. And in here we can message and run that chat in there. Or we can create references to things. So we can go, here's the references to all these different articles or files that I want to put in there. So I've got files, I can link it to emails if you've got yours linked to an Office 365 account. So I can go through and see, okay, that's the style of writing you have. But in this case, I just loaded up a bunch of files and said, that's what I want it to reference. And then we can start to go. So we can create and go. So we can do things like a mind map out of that, a study guide out of it, or a new page, or what I really want to do. It's just want to create some stuff like I did before. So what I could do in here is create a process by which a new page, but I create a little bit of a detail about the kind of process I want to go through. The problem is it doesn't do sequences as well and as easily as what it would do through Claude, ChatGPT, and Google's Gemini. What you can do is set up things called agents inside Copilot. And that's a whole other webinar for another time. And I will do some Copilot things very shortly. But it's very much around getting it to do a lot of things on its own rather than you going through a step-by-step process like you would with a GPT or a project or a gem. So that's really, I guess, the whole thing about trying to make these things sound like you. It feels like sometimes it's so eerily like me that it should be illegal because honestly, it sometimes absolutely nails it to a point where I go, did I write that? And then I remember, actually, I kind of did, because remember, I told the story in there. So the really big takeaway, I think, for you today is after I send you all this stuff, I want you to have a think about the way you use it and probably don't be so often typing in the input you want. So when you set up your sequence and you got the bit where it takes a personal story, rather than typing that in, talk to it. I know you probably can't do that at work in a noisy environment, but try it at home, try it on your phone, anything like that. Just talk the story in, just to see the difference it's going to make with how it tells that story. Not all of us feel comfortable with cameras and microphones like I am. I've been around them all my life, but you're not talking to this thing up here. So don't worry about too much that you're talking to a camera. Just talk to the microphone or hold the microphone up and just start rambling. It's really good at untangling our rambling. And that's the one thing I'm really pushing a lot lately is just ramble, because it does follow, it does get it, and it can untangle all that sort of extra talk and filler words and ums and ahs and, oh no, that's right. It can follow along really well. So once you do that, you've told your story, you've got your content framework, you've got, say, in my case, it's going, what's the topic, what's the story, what's the kind of approach you want to take, what is the question you want to ask, and who is it for. Once it's got all that information, that can be pretty easy to follow, and you can find you can use it again and again and again and again with countless topics. So you can take away the content creation side of it and just concentrate on more on going back in your calendar and going, well, what happened this week? What conversations did I have? What kind of challenges did I overcome? And then you work from there.